Welcome to our session on applying blockchain for operational value. My name is Jonathan Wiener, and I'm the CRO at Aurachain. And over the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to talk about probably the most fundamental question going around the industry today. That being, how do I as an organization apply this promising technology for some tangible level of operational value? Now, this may seem like a puzzling question to most people. After all, people have been talking about blockchain for years now, and so much is written about it in the media. More so, when you take a look at the industry, across the industry, it's generally agreed by analysts, technologists, private sector organizations, government institutions, that this technology is going to have a significant impact on the global economy, essentially reconfiguring the way commercial ecosystems are currently composed and the way people transact across these ecosystems. The impact is going to be pervasive across a variety of different sectors, such as banking, fintech, insurance, government, real estate, supply chain, and even healthcare. A good illustration of this came forth in a report that was published last year by the World Economic Forum, where they talked about the potential of blockchain to bolster global trade to the tune of $1 trillion by 2028. This was substantiated by a report they sanctioned from a company called Baines & Company, which really focused in on the global trade finance industry. And finding that as they looked across the industry, much of it still relied on systems that were outdated. All right, and the result was a global trade finance gap of an excess of $2.4 trillion. And what they're saying here, quite simply, is that there's $2.4 trillion of potential trade that's looking to happen that cannot be handled within this global ecosystem of financial services institutions and the way they interact today. Now, the culprit, as always, paper-intensive manual processes. All right, and these processes lead to complexity and delays, introduce errors and risk, and stand in the way of reliable real-time information gathering and tracking that's required for credible financing decisions. The report also really focused on blockchain and its potential, saying it could streamline these processes for everybody involved, whether the preliminary stage of waiting for confirmation on finance or tracking the physical position of goods across the chain. All right, the technology has the potential to provide for anyone who has access to it or anyone permission real-time information on everything that's going on. Now, this as a result is leading to investment, as I said, cross-sector. All right, a good example of this is the financial services industry. This type of impact has a variety of industry sectors working to understand the technology and, more importantly, how to apply it. For example, last year within the financial services sector, reports said that 90% of North American and European banks were investigating blockchain. And that includes 67% of central banks who were already experimenting with the technology. In terms of investments last year, over $550 million was spent in this area, with a significant push by global tier ones such as JP Morgan, UPS, and Credit Suisse, to name some. More so, there's a lot of PR being generated around some major use case applications that are in testing. These include HSBC, who says they've completed the first trade finance deal using the technology to secure a letter of credit involving the shipment of soybeans from Argentina to Malaysia. Another big initiative in the press involves the announcement by Maersk and IBM of a global blockchain-enabled shipping solution, which they claim is going to reduce transit time of shipments by 40% in North America. One of the companies who I've known for years, who has a long-standing reputation as an early adopter of innovative technology, is Walmart. And they're currently working with IBM to release a blockchain-powered system for tracking food globally through the supply chain. And lastly, the People's Bank of China has launched a pilot for a blockchain-powered ecosystem for cross-border trading. So why then, with all this investment going into it and all these initiatives, is there still this fundamental question that's pervasive across the marketplace? And I think the answer comes in a variety of different areas, starting with the fact that analysts and technologists define the way people think about blockchain. Right? They talk about its disruptive potential and its ability to reconfigure commercial ecosystems and reconfigure the way transactions take place. They talk about this future state global economy where governments, regulators, businesses, trading partners, and citizens are all working together for mutual value. Right? They also present, as we just saw, a common set of big picture, what I call save the world use case studies that show this collaboration once it's implemented. Now, they're compelling when they talk about these cases, all right? And this is a warning across the industry that people need to pay attention, all right? And they are paying attention. The attention and the interest is pervasive across all target sectors. The problem is they leave things out, right? And that typically starts with this idea of collaboration and how difficult it is to address collaboration, right? We're talking about an environment where organizations, entities with disparate interests and purposes are all working in perfect harmony together for some synergistic and collaborative and mutual purpose and set of advantages, right? But the fundamental question is, when was the last time that anyone collaborated easily or quickly? The second question is one about where does the data come from? All right, and let's start with the fact that these save the world use cases imply that rich sets of usable data already reside on a highly distributed ledger. So again, think about entities around the world, governments, regulators, businesses, their trading partners. They're all working together across this blockchain, this distributed ledger. But to do that, data sits there, and they're coming across with the idea that there are rich sets of data that are pervasive and are already being utilized. But they never address how it actually gets there in the first place. The third reason I always point to is that much of the information that's being published on the industry is centered on what I call the few. All right? So this public information centers on these big picture use cases being tested by global or large tier 1 institutions with the support of large vendors and blockchain-focused fintechs. Right? These are the entities that are investing a large amount of capital in research and pilot projects. Right? They're forming collaboration consortiums with collaborative offerings. They're looking to lead and therefore shape the reconfiguration of the rest of the industry. And this is an important point. Right? These tier 1 institutions are entering this and investing in this to prevent being disrupted. These organizations are looking to take advantage of the potential of the technology so that when the global ecosystems are reconfigured, that they can be the center of what's going on. Right? The problem is that tier 2 and beyond are typically left in a wait and watch mode. And therefore, these are the organizations that are greatest competitive disadvantage if the big players reconfigure the entire landscape. So where do we go from there as an organization? What should our strategy be? We at Aurachain always with our clients talk about a 3-pronged strategy. Right? It starts with understanding how to apply distributed ledger technology and starting to utilize it today. After all, no one should dictate when, where, and how quickly you should benefit. The second element deals with preparation for participation and competition in a larger set of ecosystems. All right, and how do you do that? You do that by creating a repository of blockchain-ready data that's in a purpose-built manner. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. All right, you also do it by establishing and extending your own ecosystems, one trading partner at a time. Last but not least, you then become the disruptor. Why not? All right, you as an organization are typically more agile than the tier 1 institutions, and you have no unique disadvantage. So let's now delve into some principles around blockchain. All right, and we'll start with a basic definition. What is blockchain technology? Right, well, blockchain technology is a distributed ledger in which every transaction is immediately, automatically, iteratively, and permanently recorded. Right, that information can be seen by other users of the blockchain and creates a chain of chronological data that no single party can alter or control. There are 3 primary functions of blockchain, and we're going to dig into each of them. First is creating a singular registry of data. We're going to talk about that data that's immutable, traceable, auditable, and sequential. The second has to do with the application of smart contracts for the orchestration of registered data for a purpose. And last but not least, tokenization of assets. So what can you store in a blockchain registry? All right, well, the answer is any type of data. You can store activities, declarations, proof of actions, requests, data records, agreements, contractual or other. All right, these can be composed in or comprised in class data, documents, date timestamps, financial transaction records, and virtually any type of data can be stored to a shared ledger. There are common characteristics surrounding this data, typically 2 of them. Number 1, most importantly, it's data that requires sharing across entities for a common purpose, but sometimes different interests. The second is that it's relational data that's typically clustered around a source element, and this provides value to itself. So let's give an illustrative example, and let's use the banking sector, where the source entity would be a client. All right, there's lots of different pieces of information that apply to a specific client. All right, their passport to prove their citizenship. all right, residence ID, negative news records, bank accounts, cash deposits, loan agreements, risk ratings, AML checks. These are all different things that are created, all right, through the management of that client and their interaction with the bank over the course of time, and that have some purpose both today and on a forward-moving basis. So how do these ledger objects get written to the blockchain? Well, the answer is simpler than you think. Right? It's through operational process applications, where at some point in time, one entity needs to imprint something on a ledger that can't be changed by another and needs to be referenced either now or later by both entities. Now again, this can include declarations, required source data, someone's position on a subject, compliance process related documentation, a proof of interaction with some entity, all right, that I did this or you did that, an agreement, contract documents. Again, all provided with a business context, with an operational context. And why do we store this data? Right, for immutable proof of state and to avoid disputes. All right, and in the course of doing that, to step by step remove the need to trust. Now, these operational processes are facilitated through what are called smart contracts. All right, smart contracts essentially facilitate the steps of the transaction process. There's self-executed code that essentially facilitates step-by-step a transaction process. All right, they request inputs from contract participants, they utilize for purpose existing data on this registry, and they stamp new relevant data or activity in the registry. Let's take an illustrative example here of a smart contract for the purpose of factoring. And for those of you who aren't familiar with factoring, factoring is essentially the process where a vendor, all right, sells something to a customer. All right, maybe they're going to bill that customer over the course of time for various deliverables associated with their contract. Right? Factoring allows an organization, a vendor, to go to a bank or to a factoring company and essentially hand the invoice process over to them and take immediate receipt of the capital from the specific contract. All right, now this is an operational process. All right, it starts with me as a vendor, let's say, applying to do factoring with a specific bank. The bank would then do a risk analysis. They might ask me for additional information. They would then go out and they would want to assess the ability of my customer to pay them. They would need to notify me when they've accepted my application. We would need to sign a contract together. They would need to notify the payer. And at the end of the road, they need to update a lot of records. All right, so let's start at the beginning. All right, with me as I'm the customer to the bank. All right, I'm the seller. All right, there's certain things the bank knows about me to start with. Historically, they may have KYC data on me. They may have done AML checks for another transaction. They may have a credit score. They may have a risk rating. This is all information that exists at the beginning. And let's say this information exists on the blockchain as we stand today. When I submit the application, all right, I need to upload an application. All right, I need to upload the customer invoice and the contract associated with it. And this information also would be written to the ledger. The bank then would go and do a couple of activities. They would do a credit assessment and they would do another AML check. Now this AML check is actually the latest version of an AML that's done on me. All right, so this is replacing, we're not erasing the previous version. This is just the most recent version of an AML that's timestamped that was done for me on this specific date. They may request from me my latest P&Ls or balance sheets, and again, I would upload these as part of the smart contract when it prompted me to do so. All right, at that point, they're going to go out and they're going to start investigating the payer, and they would do an AML check on the payer. All right, and that AML check would again be stored on the ledger. They might also access external reports and store that information in the findings on the ledger. When it comes time, they would issue a decision document to me. And that decision document is saying they approve my specific request for factoring. And that approval, again, is stored on the ledger. All right, more so, they would generate a contract that we would sign, which would be stored on the ledger. All right, and they would go out to the payer to get approval on it from their side. Last but not least, they would take a look at the whole process. They would update me on the client, my risk score, all right, associated with the work I'm doing with the bank, all right, and update my credit rating. And these are the latest versions. So this smart contract, self-executing contract, essentially runs through this entire operational process, prompting each of the stakeholders when necessary, all right, to interact with it for some collaborative purpose. All right, as I said before, all right, these automated processes place data on a blockchain, one instance at a time. That's how data gets on the blockchain. All right, but in summary, data is always written to a shared ledger for a business purpose within a business context. One is part of a broader operational process. It's simply a decision on whether blockchain ledgers are of use or not in any specific application. The third purpose for blockchain technology, one of the greatest areas of potential being talked about, is the tokenization of assets. All right, and I'll just work off the description here, which talks about an asset-backed token. All right, an asset-backed token is a blockchain token that is connected to a tangible or intangible object that has economic value. It essentially digitizes an asset and records its associated information on a blockchain. There are two types of assets they typically talk about. They call them fungible and non-fungible. Don't worry about remembering fungible or non-fungible. All right, essentially the breakdown though is any fungible assets essentially are not assigned to a physical entity. All right, so a good example would be security tokens or any commodities sold on an exchange. For instance, precious metals, oil, energy, and sugar, where an ounce of gold has the same value regardless of the physical piece of gold that exists anywhere in the world. Non-fungible physical assets have a physical item that they're associated with. That physical item could be a property, it could be a piece of art, it could be a person's identity, it could even be investment in a company. And there's lots of value that's associated with this ability to tokenize assets. Number one being that you can then fractionalize these assets. So let me give you an example. Let's say we took Burj Khalifa, which has value, Burj Khalifa, the tower in Dubai, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, and that has a massive amount of value associated with it. Let's say we wanted to sell off pieces of Burj Khalifa without actually selling apartment ownership to people. So the actual ownership of the building itself. If we were to tokenize Burj Khalifa and everything associated with its identity as an asset, all right, and with its composition as an asset, we could essentially sell it in 1,000 pieces to 1,000 different shareholders. Same things with companies, same things with properties, same things with art, same things with music, and so on and so forth. This in turn drives liquidity, all right, around the sale of these types of assets around the world. It makes it easier to pass through ownership rights. It actually reduces the volatility of the value of these over time, all right? It's a great use, and it's a very promising future use of tokenization. Tokenization is taking place today. So the question now becomes, where do you start, all right? And again, I want to reemphasize, it's still about business priorities. We only need to identify which priority is best served by shared ledger technology. And that always starts with a simple question. Where do I need to establish trust for some operational purpose? Now, the answer is found in two areas typically. Information that you need to capture in an immutable, authorized, and shareable format, right? And process interactions involving external entities. And external entities can be a customer, a vendor, a trading partner, or other ecosystem members. What type of applications are we talking about? Again, operational process applications, where at some point one entity needs to print something on a ledger that can't be changed by another and needs to be referenced by both. The key thing I always point out is you don't need to save the world on day one, all right? It's not your job to save the world on day one, so don't worry about building global ecosystems, all right, and agreeing with global partners and how you're gonna work together, all right? So in summary, I would summarize by saying data is always captured on a shared and immutable ledger within the context of a tangible and broader operational purpose. This kind of data includes declarations, commitments, agreements, interactions, physical documents, or any other data that needs to be captured for proof, auditability, and for reuse in other operational applications. The path to any company having a place in a broader blockchain ecosystem is through the ability to share data that is already proven to be trusted. And once it's there, as a byproduct of one trusted interaction with one entity, it can be reused in other process interactions with additional entities. Why? Because it got there through an irrefutable trust technology model. And in the end, again, what I always say is, don't worry about the word blockchain. Right? Just focus on operational process priorities, then evaluate whether blockchain makes sense. Thank you very much for attending the workshop. If you're interested in learning more on this topic, please feel free to contact us at Aurachain. We're running interactive workshops right now that help clients understand where they start in terms of initial use cases.